Daily Politics on Trust TV. I'm Abdullahi Ahmed. Thank you most kindly for joining us. Tensions continue to rise following US President Donald Trump's renewed threat to intervene in Nigeria over alleged persecution of Christians. While the Nigerian government insists it remains committed to tackling terrorism on its own terms, Washington appears to be weighing a limited military response, including possible airstrikes on Nigerian locations to hold the attacks in parts of the country. Tonight, we'll be speaking with retired Major General Umar Mohammed on what this brewing standoff means for Nigeria's sovereignty, regional stability, and its relationship with the United States. But first, let's bring you up to speed with the latest developments in the polity.
President Bola Tinubu has restated his government's determination to defeat terrorism and strengthen diplomatic ties with Nigeria's allies. He said the administration is engaging the world diplomatically and will pursue its renewed hope agenda with clarity to build a prosperous nation. Tinubu spoke before the Federal Executive Council went into a closed-door session, the council's first meeting since July. Reports indicate that the United States military has begun drafting plans for intervention in Nigeria. This follows President Donald Trump's claim that a Christian genocide is taking place in the country and that Washington may act to take care of the terrorists. After Trump's remarks, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth directed the Africa's command to submit options for possible strikes in Nigeria. The move has triggered mixed reactions from international observers and Nigeria's foreign partners. A bill before the U.S. Congress seeks visa bans and asset freezes on members of the Miyetti Allah Cattle Breeders Association and Miyetti Allah Kautal Hore. The proposal forms part of measures linked to alleged violations of religious freedom in Nigeria. And finally, the BBC has questioned the accuracy of data used to claim Christians are being persecuted in Nigeria. The Christian genocide narrative gained renewed attention after Vice President Kashim Shettima's address at the UN General Assembly, where he condemned the Gaza conflict and called for Palestinian statehood.
Right, let's segue back to the biggest talking point of the week, which is the growing tension between Nigeria and the United States. The latest development includes that proposed plan, which, according to reporting by the New York Times and also by some of the reporting that has been done domestically, indicates that the hard, medium and soft plans have been submitted for consideration for any sort of military action or mission in Nigeria, going by the body language of the Trump administration. This against the backdrop of what's happening in the United States Congress, even though the government has been shut for the past couple of weeks. Those 31 lawmakers who are recommending in their bill the sanctions to the associations that are quite critical to the livestock sector in Nigeria, talking about the two Fulani-led groups, Miyetti Allah Cattle Breeders Association as well as Miyetti Allah Kautal Hore. How does this change the dynamics of the conversation we're having about the escalation in rhetoric between what's happening here in Nigeria regarding the security challenges and what Mr. President said earlier in the day about the diplomatic approach that this administration is exploring to bring the temperatures down? Well, let's speak to someone who understands military language as well as the security dilemma that Nigeria is dealing with. We'll be speaking with retired Major General Umar Mohammed, who is here to provide some context to the conversation. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. It's good to see you again.
It's a pleasure being here.
Right. First and foremost, your thoughts as a Nigerian, hearing what you're hearing from the international community, domestically, people's views, the polarization, online, offline. What do you make of what has been happening over the last couple of days?
Well, we actually waked up to a very sad news in which the President of the United States said that he intends to carry out a strike in Nigeria, and the strike is going to be fast, vicious and sweet. Now, this followed what was done before. That means Nigeria is actually classified as a country of particular concern. Now, this issue has actually led to palpable fear. There is anxiety. People are disturbed. People are angry because Nigeria is a sovereign nation. Nigeria is an independent nation. Why should somebody from somewhere intends to protect intends to attack our country? And what he said is that he actually said that he is going to do that because of perceived genocide against Christians. Genocide means a systematic destruction, of persons based on their creed, race, tribe, or religion. I can tell you that for all those who are in Nigeria, we all know that Boko Haram and even the bandits, they are actually attacking all Nigerians irrespective of race, religion, or creed. Therefore, that means the assumption of the United States on this is false. And what will happen is that this will actually increase acrimony, exacerbate tension, increase hostility, and further polarize the country. People are afraid and disturbed because all of us have seen what US interventions have done elsewhere. We're all witnesses during the Iraq issue, in which the United States, their intelligence agency, stated that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. At that time, the International Atomic Energy Agency, headed by al-Baradi, categorically opposed the United States and insisted that Iraq did not have weapons of mass destruction. But US still went ahead and attacked Iraq. Before they attacked Iraq, Iraq was a peaceful, stable, prosperous country. Since their attack, Iraq has descended into anarchy, destruction, crisis, and conflict. That up to today, Iraq has not gone back to what it was before the US attack. Secondly, we have also seen what happened in Libya. Before Libya was attacked in an effort in which the US toppled Gaddafi and killed him, Libya was a very peaceful, prosperous, egalitarian society in which people were living peacefully, harmoniously with one another. Since after the US invasion, Libya has not known peace. They destroyed their infrastructure, destroyed their military, which led to actually influx of several sophisticated weapons. The dire consequence of that invasion is what we are still handling today.
Do you think Nigeria shares the same characteristic in terms of the rhetoric, in terms of what the military actions could be? We understand that the Pentagon, in its plans, which is standard operating procedure for them, have the hard, the medium, and the light option in terms of what interventions could look like. Are you saying you have concerns that Nigeria could receive the Iraq or Libya treatment? Is that your concern?
You see, in the hard, they said that they are going to bring their submarine or whatever to the Gulf of Guinea, and with it they will use attack helicopters and carry out sweeping strikes on non-terrorist locations. In the medium, they are looking at using drones and other lighter lethal weapons to carry out decapitation operation by actually removing the heads or eliminating bandits and terrorists. Thirdly, is actually the issue of actually the list, which is the one in which they intend to share training or information with us. I can tell you that, you see, in the military, there is what we call fog of war. What we say fog of war, what we mean is that before a war starts, nobody knows what will happen when the war starts. Nobody. Nobody can determine what will happen after firing the first shot. They could have actually done their own studies. They could have studied the equipment, disposition, training, plans and intentions of the terrorist. But studying somebody cannot really, you can never read somebody's mind.
Right, but you can also tell that there is some sort of acceptance of this narrative calling for the American invasion, saying, listen, this is signposting the failure of successive Nigerian governments to deal with the Boko Haram insurgency, which became Boko Haram/ISWAP insurgency, the growing strength of banditry across the northwest, which has now spilled over to the north central and other parts of the country. Ergo, people are holding the opinion that if the Americans are coming to target Boko Haram, the Americans are coming to target bandits, why should we have a problem with that?
Okay, you see, I can just tell you that practically one of the inhibitions which prevented Nigerian armed forces from actually completing this war has to do with, one, the issue of equipment. I can tell you that the United States have over the years refused to sell weapons to us, even though recently I've seen that they have approved $346 million worth of equipment. Even 2 years ago, they have approved $997,000 worth of equipment to us, which includes 12 attack helicopters and some drones, some night vision equipment. But I can just tell you that one of the inhibitions, one of the critical issues that actually made it impossible for us up to now to have actually defeated and destroyed Boko Haram has to do with lack of equipment, lack of intelligence. So what I'm just saying is that, to me, if the US wants to end this, the best way they should have done it is to provide Nigeria with additional equipment, with additional intelligence. Because I can tell you that, imagine, see what is happening in Ukraine. US has provided $66.9 billion worth of hardware and software to Ukrainian armed forces.
But you read Trump's body language, you read his tweets, you read from the statements from the White House, the lawmakers who have been pushing for this intervention. They believe they can't trust the capacity, neither can they trust the intentions of the Nigerian government to get the job done. And do you understand where they're coming from? If they say, listen, the government has failed to do the needful and we don't see room for us to actually work with them to get this job done.
You see, this is why I say all that is a perception. There is no government that will actually not want to end insecurity. I know that there is a lot of insinuations everywhere that we have already inside what is called a war economy, in which everybody is benefiting from it. So we want it to continue to thrive. We want it to continue to escalate. But I can just tell you that let's go back. Jonathan failed because of insecurity. Buhari was elected because of the fact that people felt he was going to address the issue of insecurity. And currently, I can just tell you that the biggest thorn in the flesh of this government is worsening insecurity. Therefore, because you see, all what I'm saying is that I don't want a situation in which, because these bandits you see, the insurgents and what have you, they're actually not only in the bush. They could be anywhere. And the US can start targeting them. You know, and that could actually lead to an escalation. We don't even know what will happen once they are attacked. So the question is that why not do it with us? This is our country. We're a sovereign nation. Because, and all what I'm just telling you is that, you see, you don't give away your sovereignty. We have an army. We have an armed forces. And the question is that if it is, they should give us the equipment, the technical know-how, I can tell you that we can deliver.
But don't you think, General, that the trust is very important for something like this to happen? Because I remember the records show in 2020, in 2022, we have worked on the soft elements where we've had U.S. Team SEALs operate in Nigeria as part of a rescue operation. It's on record, and I believe that if we go back in history, there are other times that we've collaborated, worked together in one form or the other. I mean, it's clear that the Trump administration does not believe it can work with the Nigerian government to get the job done. Is there a workaround here where they could, I mean, we know they could unilaterally force their way in and do whatever it is that they want to do. I mean, history has shown us that they're capable of doing that.
Yes.
What, in your view, should the government of Nigeria be open to? I mean, the CDS just a couple of days ago said, listen, we agree that we're dealing with existential threats, but they don't agree that we're dealing with a persecution of a particular group based on their religion. The Nigerian army does not believe that there is a Christian genocide here. Do you see the Nigerian army being bystanders, or is there a possibility that some friction could arise if the United States decides to unilaterally get itself involved in Nigeria's internal affairs?
Well, you see, you have made a very good, you have given a good example. Actually, there was a time when the U.S. sought the cooperation of the Nigerian government and the Nigerian troops, in which they conducted search and rescue around Sokoto side, and the military gave them all the support. And I can just tell you that over the years, we have actually been attending training, we have been purchasing equipment, we have a very good collaboration. Not only that, they are also giving us a lot of intelligence as to the locations, but the intelligence they are giving us is not enough. I agree with you. This is why I say my only fear is the fact that, you see, no country will allow such to happen. Another country to come and fight your war. And the question is that if we say they should come and do it, what are we saying? Are we saying that we have agreed that there is a Christian genocide in Nigeria? Certainly there is no Christian genocide. You see, the United States is actually the strongest army in the world. In fact, it was war-gamed, and it is believed that the US alone can fight the entire world. The army of the United States is, it has a strength of 1.3 million, with about 700,000 reservists, which is equal to the biggest army now, which is India, which has about 2 million, and China about 1.4. Now the question, but if you look at in terms of equipment, the US is far, far, far ahead of every other nation. Currently, they are spending about 900 billion in their budget, you know, yearly, in ensuring that they make sure that they have top notch in terms of equipment. Their B-2 bomber is the best in the world, and I've seen it some years back in one of the air shows, and I can tell you that is something extraordinary. So the question is that the US is far, far ahead of any other nation. So the question is that all what I'm saying is that as a government, you should not surrender your sovereignty. You see,
is this a question of pride? Because there are some Nigerians who are right now watching you and listening to you who simply just disagree, who say, listen, General, we understand your military discipline and your pride about, you know, protecting the territorial integrity of this country, but lives are at stake here. And we've been going round in circles for the last 1.5 decades with very little to show for it. We've seen these problems multiply. Why not let people who have, quote unquote, proven track record to come in and get the job done?
You see, this is why I say I look at people and I tell them that some instances we don't appreciate what has been achieved. Now, let me tell you, the worst person you can fight in this world is somebody who has no future. Most of these insurgents are miscreants. Most of these bandits are miscreants. They don't have future, so they don't fear anything. That is number one. Secondly, whether people accept it or not, I can tell you that a lot of successes were recorded. One of the things, for instance, in the insurgency, we have been able to limit the bandits to the bush. They are not holding any town in this country. They are not in Abuja. They are not in Kaduna. They are not in Kano. Do you think they would like to stay and be living with monkeys and lizards without light, without water?
But is it not enough that they have made life unbearable for so many communities in this country? Is that not enough to take them this seriously?
I agree with you that a lot of things need to be done. Even me, all of us who are in the armed forces, were not happy, are not satisfied with what has been done. But as I have said, to me, if given the option, I would have stated that let them collaborate with us. Let them work with us. Even the last time they came for rescue, they were part of it. You know, so let them collaborate with us. Not that we should be bystanders and they should come to our country and say they have solved our problems. And I can tell you that America has not solved anybody's problem.
Okay, best and worst case scenario. Give me your hypothesis about what could go wrong, but more importantly, what could go right if the US gets involved.
Okay, you see, if the US gets involved, one, possibly they can be able to strike the correct targets, kill the correct bandits. However, you see, there is no operation that does not have collateral damages. So I can see there could be an escalation which could trigger other reactions. That is one thing, because there is no way they can come, no matter the level of sophistication and precision. That you can
but you would agree that their precision is better than ours, right?
Oh, by far.
I mean, because we have RAN, we have Tudumbiri, and so many other mistakes that our Air Force has made over the years, right?
Yes.
And we've lived with it, to be honest.
I agree with you that the Air Force, this is why even today I listened to the new Chief of Air Staff, in which he has stated that he is committed to operational precision, that they should try in as much as possible to avoid harming and killing civilians. So the positive aspect is that their intervention can result in the killing, destruction of the terrorists and the bandits. This, I believe, it can happen. And I also believe that this is one option. Secondly, I can also, because the question is that these bandits, nobody knows what will they, because for instance, we all know that since they are bandits, maybe by the time the US comes, all of them disappear and go into stay with civilians where they vacate where they are currently with their weapons. And if they do that, what happens? That can happen.
You think they could hibernate if the US is coming?
They can.
Until things...
Yes, they can. They can, because the question is that, you see, this is why I say, I used to tell people that whenever you are fighting with somebody, never underestimate his ability, because the essence is the issue of survivability. How do I survive? Currently, I'm sure you have read that Chad has decided to close the border with Nigeria. It's because they have already had the feelings that some of them want to migrate to other places, to other safe havens, you know? And mark you, so this is something that can happen, you know? And then secondly, I can also see that because you can see what has happened. This is why I told people that, you see, in the military, there's what is called the fog of war. That means you can never, what is fog is something that is unclear. Once the bottom line is drawn, nobody knows how it will end. So the question is that I know they have the sophistication, they have the weapons, they have the know-how to do quite better than we have done. But I can tell you that so we could still, and even the US, even them, we have had instances of where they have actually outstepped their bounds. Go to look at what happened in Iraq, the way they were treating prisoners of war. Abu Ghraib. Go back to some of those things. These are some of inhuman treatments, and imagine international forces doing that to people of your country. So the best way is use us, give us the equipment, give us the intelligence. And I can tell you that if they do that, because I can tell you that one of the key impediments is lack of manpower and lack of enough equipment. That has actually been a drawback in all our efforts to end this issue of insecurity in the country.
And let's talk about what the options are right now for the Nigerian government. I mean, you've read the body language of the Americans. They seem to be doubling down day in, day out about their intentions, and they look quite resolved to go down this path of possible military intervention. You've heard the responses from the Nigerian side, denouncing, denying, rejecting, but also extending an open line of communication to discuss possible ways of collaboration, diplomatic options, and what have you. What do you make of the government's response, and what sort of options do they have on the table right now? I know just days after the President of the United States made that post, the Defense Headquarters came out, began reeling some numbers, and Nigerians were scratching their heads about how fast they're able to get some of these results to the public. But what options does the government have? What can our armed forces do before a determination is made about whether or not the United States is coming into the theater?
Well, the first thing is that, as I've articulated somewhere, what I stated is that there are some reactions which are expected to happen in this country. The first one is that I actually expected the President and Commander-in-Chief to have actually done a national broadcast in which he should allay our fears and let Nigerians know what the government is doing on this. Secondly, I'm of the view that in spite of the fact that even if they are not going to attack Nigeria as a nation, but I can tell you that Nigeria has some critical assets. So my view is that the President should have actually directed the armed forces and all other security agencies to upscale defense of critical assets the country has, like the refinery, Dangote, the other refineries belonging to the government, the presidential villa, the power lines,
in anticipation
yes, of whatever the US, if somebody,
but as you said,
they are not attacking Nigeria,
right.
But the question is that, you see, anything can happen. You get what I'm saying?
You think there's a chance they could attack our refineries? They could attack our critical infrastructure?
You see, the question is that, this is why I'm just telling you that, go and see. You see, one of the things we don't know is that, for instance, in the military, there is what we call perfidy. What is perfidy? That means, you see, there are rules of Geneva Convention. For instance, you don't go and attack a church. You don't attack a mosque. You don't attack a hospital or a museum. However, I can tell you that once the war starts, and even if you are a bandit, if you bring women and children, they're not supposed to attack you. But the question, this is why I say that some of these bandits, they can move somewhere and start firing from those places, which makes that place a target. So what do? Imagine now you come to attack and you hear some bandits have moved into the refinery. What happens? So you see, there are so many. This is why I say there is a fog of war. What happens after the battle line is drawn? And you see, in the military, we have what we call the order line. Whenever you are in a battle, there are 4 things that happens. You observe, you orient, you take a decision, and you act. This takes split seconds. But the question is that the other person, how does he react? So this is why I can just tell you that as a nation, I expect us to upscale our own defenses, no matter what. Then, thirdly, I'm of the view that we should also go ahead and play the diplomatic card. I am of the view that by now the president should have actually gotten some eminent Nigerians like General Obasanjo, General Abdul Salam, Inweka Inyawu, Amina, who is at the UN, even Dangote, who is an economic titan, you know, so that they can form a lobby group, so that we can go to the UN, the AU, EU, and even the Vatican, so that we should be able to actually lobby and see that let it be done in our own way, the way we want it. How do you want it? Because even if they want to use drones, use us. We can be able to operate the drones. They can give us where they can be part of us.
Some would say, Major, the question is, they apparently don't trust us, the Nigerian government, that is. But again, I go back to the question about how this could play out, right? Clearly, it's about, for some people, some section of the country, and you can see that there is a sharp division, online, offline, the way people are talking about it. People are saying, listen, why do you care if bandits are going to be exterminated? Why do you care if terrorists are going to be exterminated? You put a caveat on it that there could be casualties, there could be collateral damage, right? Civilian casualties, and that is something that should be avoided. But the key question is, if the administration now is saying, listen, we can get the job done. You're saying, let's step up, let's do some deployments. I mean, the president just reshuffled, if not replaced, a significant part of his service chiefs just over a week ago. Some are saying, listen, all of this is playing to the gallery. There's a lot of eye service when it comes to the Nigerian government. They could put on a show. After a couple of months, we could be back to square one. We've seen it towards the twilight days of the Goodluck administration, when we had to postpone the elections, deal with the Boko Haram insurgency, which was upending a significant part of the northeast. After that, the Buhari administration came in, then the problems multiplied again, and we're still where we were, if not worse, to some degree. What about the Nigerian public who are divided about what this means, especially people who have suffered from these attacks, who have lost family members, who simply only see a solution in the American involvement?
You see, this is why I have said it initially, that nobody wants to have this problem. And I can tell you that everybody will be happy if the bandits are killed. Mind you, even the Americans, they refused to sell weapons to us because they said that they accuse us of human rights abuses in our fight against insurgency, that we are not following the rules. So the question is that, so that means I can just tell you that I don't have any pity for bandits and insurgents. Everybody wants, but the question is that I prefer we collaborate. I don't want us to just be bystanding and America will just come and be fighting in our own country. That is actually humiliating. It's not dignifying. And I can tell you that even the kite they're actually flying is likely to actually ignite or increase the animosity that is between the Muslims and the Christians, because they could have even by them saying that Christians are being killed, that's why they are here, you know. Because the question is that and if they say there is genocide, you see, this is why America has a lot of double standards, because what Israel did and is still doing in Gaza is more of genocide than what is happening here, where you can see houses are destroyed, innocent people are being killed without recourse. And it's Americans that are giving them the ammunition to do that. And they don't see that as genocide. And they are seeing that what is happening here has been genocide. I think that is something that is very wrong.
Right. Okay. Let's talk about what the President of the United States has said over the last couple of days. He talked about cutting aid as well as some of the collaborations with the Nigerian government, because they believe the government is just bystanding while these atrocities, quote unquote, have been perpetrated against Christian communities. So let's take a quick snapshot at areas of collaboration militarily, where the United States and the Nigerian armed forces have been collaborating, and why Nigerians should care about any sort of cut when it comes to those aid. So we talk about the air-to-ground integration, which covers precision strikes, as we discussed, that would help mitigate civilian harm, which has become a common occurrence in Nigeria's fight against insurgency as well as banditry. The United States, in this particular manner, offer operational support. There's also the component of the humanitarian capacity building, projects that have been largely funded by U.S. military support. It's non-combat support. It also highlights the need for capacity building in that type of engagement. There's also the training and exchange program, the SBS plus the U.S. Special Forces training, which is a joint training where the Nigerian armed forces benefit significantly in this aspect. There's also the maritime security, where the multinational maritime exercise includes U.S. and Nigerian forces. And lastly, direct combat operations. There's very limited public records about this, but these are some of the key areas of collaboration that can amount to aid as well as operational support between Nigeria and the United States. So when the President of the United States said, listen, we're going to cut this aid because the Nigerian government is not doing the needful in addressing the same concerns that the administration of the United States is raising, what is the impact of cutting these operational, strategic trainings that you have highlighted as important in the fight against insecurity?
You see, I can just tell you that Nigeria is a strategic United States partner. Nigeria is the single biggest, most populous country in Africa, with a population of about 230 million people. We are the 6th most populated country in Africa. We don't only have the population, we have quality population, and we have a lot of resources, starting from oil, gold, and so many other mineral resources. So I can tell you that by cooperating with Nigeria strategically, there is mutual benefits. The US benefits from that.
In what way exactly?
Good. The question is that how the UN benefits is the fact that Nigeria is a power in West Africa. Currently now, the US is doing two things. They are trying to see that there are no more coups in West Africa, and they see Nigeria as a strategic ally. They also are not happy to see, they don't want to see expansion of Russian influence in West Africa and in other parts of Africa. And they see Nigeria as a strategic partner. Not only that, they are also afraid of what China is doing in trying to win friendship and support from other African countries. Let me tell you one thing which is very key. If you look at trade between Nigeria and US, last year in 2024, the volume was just 13 billion. That means the export from the US accounted for 10 billion. The import from Nigeria is about 3 billion. But the trade between Nigeria and China is in the excess of 21 billion, almost twice that, which means gradually China is actually replacing US as a close ally and a trade partner. And you see in a partnership, there are three things that are very key. One, diplomatic relationship, trade relationship, and military relationship. These three are the tripod upon which you can be able to establish how close you are. So I can just tell you that the US stands to gain because Nigeria is a power in West Africa. Nigeria is a power in Africa because of our own economic strength, our population, and our economic viability. So I believe that the US, if they discard Nigeria, they are losing a strategic partner.
And how do we salvage this diplomatically? And I'm asking this question for you to extrapolate from Donald Trump's track record. his first term, his second term. He likes to think that he's the president of peaceful negotiations. He has, posted significantly about some of the peace deals that he has negotiated. I mean, some of them are not necessarily very clear because there are some countries who are on that list who didn't even know they needed some sort of intervention. But is there a way to walk back this threat that you think the Tinubu administration can explore? Because the Americans have over the years tried to establish some sort of military base here, and several administrations in the past have pushed back. They have left Niger, which had given them some sort of cover alongside the French forces. And we've also pointed out the incursion of Russia and China economically and otherwise in this part of the region. So Nigeria is an obvious strategic partner. What are some of the low-hanging fruits that you think could walk back this threat and rebuild trust and this mutual relationship that people think we have with the United States?
This is why I say the low-hanging fruit is in the fact that by the time you look at our economic strength, by the time you look at our population, we're an essential partner that the US should have in Africa. This is why you could see that even when we're speaking of which country should be a permanent member in the United States, in the United Nations in Africa, so many people have actually been speaking about Nigeria being the most suitable. So the question is that the US should not do without Nigeria. And this is why I believe that we should be able to reiterate that Nigeria is actually a defendable ally. And I can tell you that even when the issue of some Americans that were kidnapped, they called us and being an ally, we facilitated the conduct of the operations. And currently we have so many Nigerians who are actually who are on course in South Africa. Not only that, even them, you can see that currently now the US is building the biggest consulate in the entire world in Lagos, which means that they have seen a future in the partnership they have with Nigeria. So I can just tell you that moving forward, I'm of the belief that we should continue to collaborate with the US. And the US should collaborate with us. But we should be seen as equal partners. We should not be seen...
Are we though?
We are not. What I'm just saying is that we should be viewed as a sovereign nation. In other words, we should not be seen as if we are nothing. That means they'll just come here, do what they want. No. We should dictate the terms that this is what we want.
Do you think their tone lacks respect for Nigeria as a sovereign nation?
Didn't you see what he said? That disgraced nation? You don't use that for a nation. That is a wrong word to use for a sovereign nation. And as a president, people should not expect that from him.
Right.
So the question is that Nigeria is not a disgraced nation. We are not. And we have an armed forces and we have a government. So whatever you're going to do as a nation, it should come through our government. And this is why I can tell you that if to say the government will now say, okay, we're going to outsource our security to the US. If it's the government that wishes that, it's okay, I'm okay with that. Because, by the way, I'm sure you remember during Jonathan time, there was a time when we actually invited some South Africans who came, and they supported us, and it went well. So the US can be able to support us in this fight without really coming to do it on their own. That is my belief, and I'm of the view that the government should tell them this is what we want you to do, and they should be able to do it because of Nigeria is a strategic partner.
Okay.
Nigeria is a very important country in Africa and in the world.
Well, just before that announcement, the last couple of weeks has been inundated by reports, allegations of a military coup that was thwarted. And in the midst of that conversation, we saw the rejigging of the military hierarchy. Changes with the Chief of Defense Staff. We now have a new Chief of Army Staff, Naval Staff, as well as Chief of Air Staff. Your 2 cents on, not the coup matter for a fact, but this change and the president's matching orders about results, about performance. People have several opinions about what has played out, but generally speaking, what usually is the mood when certain changes like that are made? How does it affect the rank and file in terms of momentum, in terms of morale, and what some of the immediate results could be?
You see, what is very important is, you see, we have a document which is called Harmonized Terms and Conditions of Service, which is HTACOS. That stipulates the conditions upon which we have been administered, including the tenure of the Chief of Army Staff, Chief of all the service chiefs. And in that document, it is stipulated clearly that service chiefs should be tenured, and the tenure should be 2 years. These ones, the ones that have just left, if you could remember, they were appointed in June 2023. So by June this year, they have spent 2 years. So what we expected is that even if you don't change them, you are supposed to renew their tenure. So, and I can tell you that, you see, the military over the years, the military that I know, were actually very much used to transition. And what I tell people is that anybody that you see that has become a general has attended the same courses with the ones, because you cannot reach a general without attending those courses. So all those ones who are replacing those who are going are equally trained and equally good. And I can tell you that one of the best ways you can, and I used to tell people that, to me, within 2 years, you should be able to do whatever you want to do if you are a leader. So after 2 years, if you are removed, then and to me, the ones that are coming are supposed to be so enthusiastic. They are supposed to come with new ideas, and that should be able to rejig and reinvigorate the fight against insurgency, and that's what I expect. So to me, and I can tell you that we in the army, the loyalty is there. We give loyalty to command. Whoever they say is the Chief of Army Staff, the entire army falls behind him. Whoever they say is the Chief of Naval Staff, the entire Navy falls behind him and provides him all the support. Because if you are the Chief of Army Staff, you actually command the army. Chief of Naval Staff commands the Air Force. And being an officer, especially, I have known all of those who are actually appointed. I have known them, we have met, we have interacted during my stay in the military. So I know that the selection of the current crop of service chiefs is a good one.
So if the president turns to them and say, listen, this is the mess we're dealing with the Americans, and now the whole international community is looking at the fallout of this engagement, Trump's bombastic remarks, threat of a military intervention, I'm looking to you guys as the ones who have the strategy, the operational know-how to get the job done. Do they have what it takes to actually deliver on what Nigeria needs, which is peace and stability, especially across all the flashpoints? I mean, in Katsina, we just learned of the peace accord falling apart. In Balgori, some attacks have been recorded in the last 24 hours. And in the North Central, for instance, Plateau and Benue, which has been re-echoed in the reports in the United States, where those concerns have again been the key issues there, whether it's Operation Safe Haven, operating in those areas, trying to establish peace across these warring communities. What can the Nigerian Armed Forces do in the short and medium term, especially in relation to this escalation, to win back public trust? Because I dare say it is at an all-time low at the moment.
Well, I can agree with you that we're actually at a perilous state. I agree with you that currently I'm not happy with the situation as far as insecurity is concerned. And I think it's an opportunity for the new service chiefs to actually do the best they can to upscale what is happening. And I think they can be able to do it. The Air Force, they have strategic platforms that the Army has. So because you see, to me, a lot rests on leadership. And leadership, every leader has his own style. So I'm trying to study what will the new Chief of Army Staff do. And I think if because he's supposed to have studied the former chiefs and he has seen the level of successes they have achieved. And I think based on that, I will advise, if I'm him, to tweak the modus operandi, you know, because to me, currently we do more of defense. I advise that we should go into more of attack, more of offensive operations. And even though offensive operations is very, very expensive, but it's something that should be done. And I think if they do that, Nigerians will be happier.
All right. Interesting point to anchor the conversation here. Major General Umar Mohammed, retired. Thank you very much, as always, for your analysis on this one. I appreciate you very much for stopping by this evening. Thank you so much for your time.
You're most welcome.
Right. Okay. That's our offering for you on Daily Politics tonight. Feel free to join our next edition coming your way tomorrow live at 8 p.m. exclusive as always on Trust TV. I'm Abdullahi Ahmed from myself and the rest of the team. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.